game's over nearly, and either you see it for what it is or you don't. And that's why I really do believe if you are not a contrarian, you're bound to be a victim if this breaks. Yeah, we're getting closer than we've ever seen. In my opinion, in my career, never been this close.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Swan Capitalist YouTube channel. Once again, we are pleased to have our dear friend and guest, Andy Schectman, here with us today. For those that don't know, Andy is the CEO and owner of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. Andy, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Versan, it's great to be back with you, brother. Thanks for having me. I've been following you from afar and like what you're doing, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you, Andy. It means so much coming from you. And
absolutely, brother.
Thanks. There's a lot to talk about. It seems like everything we've been discussing is just accelerating.
Right.
We're talking about the banking crisis, credit crunches, liquidity strains to the end of the petrodollar, and even the upcoming BRICS summit in October. And since we last spoke, there has been so much news, and the news now that is perpetuating the end of the petrodollar. Basically, it's coming to an end. And this is no surprise to people out there who are doing the research, including yourself and myself, given the fact that the Biden administration is pushing for this Green New Deal. So I think that intercedes with the end of the petrodollar. So again, no surprise. But we just see so much social, political, economical, and financial changes in the global landscape. And it's just so shocking that there are still people out there that can't seem to grasp the dangers that are associated with all of these changes happening in the world and what it means for our country and our well-being, including. So please just bring us up to speed on your research and some of the latest developments.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, Versan, that people are ignorant to what's happening. And in many cases, it's of no fault of their own. I mean, I know how hard you work because I know how hard I work to stay on top of all of this information. The media in the West doesn't do a poor job of telling us what's happening. They do no job. All they do is create divisiveness. So even people that are well-read, supposedly, are arguably reading the wrong stuff and will not be prepared to get out of the way of what they've never seen coming. And it's actually kind of distressing to me. And you talk about all of these things changing. The only thing I would add to it would be moral and social, maybe even deeper than that, and spiritual. And you look at what's happened to this country, you know, with the open borders, with questioning of things that made this country special, like the electoral system, the judicial system, the immigration system, the respect of the nuclear family, the wokeness where, you know, merit is out the window, replaced with sexual preference and lifestyle, and all of these things that are not lost on the rest of the world, mind you. And, you know, I would urge people to do a little research on the Cloward-Piven theory, which is something that will blow your mind as it did mine. It was, in a nutshell, it's about husband and wife professors from Columbia University in the 60s who taught a class on bringing the capitalistic society of the United States to its knees through a mass adoption on the welfare system by largely in the inner cities, by creating a serfdom of people who would only vote for Democratic Party, and it would overwhelm the welfare system and the inner cities, leading to universal basic income and a socialist shift from capitalism to socialism. This was taught. Obama went to school right after they were teaching there in the 60s, and so did Jared Bernstein, the lead economic advisor of the United States government. And when you realize they talk about overwhelming the inner cities, using the left-leaning media to push this agenda, to speak of the inequities in the welfare system, it's very, very interesting. Cloward-Piven theory. Make sure everyone read it. It will take you 10 minutes and you'll put it together with what we talk about here and be like, my God, this is what they're doing. But yeah, you know, we've talked a lot for 3 years, almost 4. I've talked about in over 3,000 videos about the BRICS and about this growing chorus of countries that are aligning together. And we've seen Saudi Arabia, of course, join the BRICS. We've seen them join the New Development Bank. We've seen them join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional financial and military organization in the world. We've seen them tell folks that, yeah, at Davos, we'll take other currencies for oil. We've seen a lot of things happen. We've seen all the OPEC countries join the Belt Road Initiative. All of these things have led me to make these predictions, which quite actually shocks me at how accurate I was, because it's never happened like that. And it scares me at how fast it's happening. As a father of 3 kids, I'm very concerned by what I see happening. And I'm dead serious about that. And when you see the things that have just come about, I think it only becomes more concerning. So, let's talk about what's happened recently. There's been a lot of talk about the Saudis not re-upping their petrodollar deal with the United States. Now, Zoltan Pozsar is someone that I have a lot of respect for. He says we're in the middle of Bretton Woods 3. Well, let's go back. What's Bretton Woods 1? That's when the U.S. took over for the pound sterling at the end of World War II, becoming the world reserve currency, backing it by gold, whereby governments could exchange $35 for an ounce of gold anytime. So the dollars that they were holding would be as good as gold. Inspired a lot of confidence. But it was the end of the Vietnam War, 1971, when de Gaulle from France realized, indeed, we were printing more to fund the war and the guns and butter initiative that we had on the table than we had gold behind it, and sent ships to New York Harbor, as we've discussed in previous interviews, filled with dollar bills. And we want our gold, and we gave it to them. And that's what led Nixon to close the gold window, supposedly temporarily, never opened back up. And for a few years, it was fiat, backed by nothing, until Kissinger was dispatched to Saudi Arabia to strike a deal with the Saudis. And that was 50 years ago last week. Now, the Saudis agreed to, or decided to not re-up that agreement. And here we are. Now, none of this is really any surprise, as you and I were talking about. It isn't. But let's talk about some of the things that have happened leading up to this as well, and to where we are right now. So, last week, there was a BRICS meeting in Novograd in Russia. And we've talked about how there were 200 meetings from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, leading up to the big meeting in October, right? And this was one of the 200 meetings. And it coincided or overlapped with the G7 meeting in Italy, where MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, told the West, thanks for the invitation to the meeting, but I'm declining to go. I've got other things I need to do, more or less. And he didn't go. But at the same time, he sent his finance ministers to the meeting in Novograd, where 21,000 people from 139 nations attended, and almost $80 billion in bilateral trade agreements were signed on the sidelines, where, let's say, Saudi Arabia trades with China for oil. They get paid in digital yuan, and that yuan then gets sent back and immediately converted into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange for immediate delivery. What is gold again? The only tier 1 asset in the world next to US dollars and treasuries, as reclassified in 2019 by the BIS. And this is why for a long time I harped on, in 2017, when central banks had been selling gold for the past several years, the German Bundesbank, the Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Dutch National Bank, the Czech National Bank, they all repatriated their gold, just like the Bundesbank did, from the Bank of England and from the New York Fed. The Bank of England would be akin to the London Bullion Market Association, and the New York Fed, the COMEX, housed safely in these Western vaults, and the ability to trade with the big trading hubs. And it had been that way for a very, very, very long time. But it was strange to me that these nations would repatriate their gold. It spoke to the lack of trust. And this whole system, as Putin, you'll see in a moment here, speaks to a system that is built on nothing but trust because of where we are. That trust has been broken in many respects, shattered against the wall like a glass jar, and try to put it back together before mom and dad get home so you don't get your ass beat. Good luck on that. But that's where we are right now. And what we learned in this meeting, and by the way, this continuing drive of accumulation and repatriation has not ended. Let me just finish that train of thought. The central banks have been buying gold at a level the world has never seen. And I want people to know they use the suppression of the Western markets to run cover for their acquisition of gold and commodities, where on the London Metals Exchange, they are admitting to as much as 2.9 billion ounces of silver, 3.5 times global mine supply, traded every single day, every day. So they say we quote 292 million ounces traded every day, but that the trades that we list are roughly 10 times the amount of trades that are settled. Because if I sell you 100 contracts and buy 50, that's a net 50, not 150 that we exchange, just 50, and that's all that's reported. It's up to 10 times underreported. 290 million is the same thing times 10, 2.9 billion. And that's, this is how they suppress the price by rehypothecating, by creating so much paper, naked shorting as very wealthy Western commercial banks that they can overwhelm through margin calls and overwhelm. And look, no one ever stood for delivery anyway, but what we have been seeing recently is a change in that. And so we saw just the other day, India purchased 1.5 times the amount of gold they purchased all of last year. They purchased it. And then in the first quarter of this year, 1.5 times what they bought all of last year, and then repatriated 100 metric tons from the Bank of England, nearly taking possession of all of the metal that they have had since 1991. And the Bank of England, they now possess it. This theme of repatriation is a big deal. It speaks to lack of trust. But it wasn't just them. So last few weeks, we've seen Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, Algeria, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. They each repatriated their gold from these Western vaults, signaling a disillusionment with the American financial and the Western financial system. All right, now that that's been laid out, and we realize that the central banks have bought more gold over the last 4 years than at any time ever in history, and quarter one 2024 was the biggest first quarter in history, only surpassing quarter one 2023. This is a trend that is not ending, and the repatriation is as big as the accumulation. It speaks to what these banks, which I would say not only the most well-funded Versan, but the most well-informed traders in the world, they know the playbook, right? So give us the gold, let's buy it and take it home. And they are using the suppression of this massively rehypothecated Western system to run cover for it. The West doesn't want to talk about it because that's how they create, by suppressing gold and silver, the canaries in the mine shaft. They support the illusion of a strong bond market and a strong currency market, when in reality, that's all fugazi. And so these countries in the Southern Hemisphere understand this. And when forever, including 1974, when the COMEX was built, up until just recently, many of these countries in the Southern Hemisphere were not coordinated enough, not wealthy enough, sophisticated enough, united enough, nor had no desire to stand for delivery and challenge the West. They do now. And when you see a country like India import 600 million ounces of silver in the past 2.5 years, which is double the amount that supposedly is available for delivery on the LBMA, and 10 times the amount that's available for delivery on COMEX, this tells you this is serious. All right, with all of that being discussed, let's talk about what happened in the last few weeks at these meetings. There were 2 of them. Yeah. And let's talk first about the meeting in Novigrad last week. Now, as I mentioned, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia turned down a meeting or an invitation to the G7 meeting overlapping with this meeting. He didn't go to Novigrad, but his finance ministers did. They didn't go to the G7 meeting in Italy. That's a big deal, right? So from this meeting, we learned that 21,000 people attended from 139 nations, that 80 billion in those bilateral deals were done on the side. And we also learned that the BRICS payment infrastructure is actively being pursued through the New Development Bank. Now, you and I offline talked about the New Development Bank, and this will come into focus in a moment. The last thing that Putin talked about was that trade logistics and sea routes would be a major focus for cooperation. And if you look at all of the countries that are in the Belt Road, melding with the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation, and the Eurasian Economic Union, who I've been saying for years will join the BRICS, President of Belarus is calling for a summit for this to happen. They are all the same countries. And when you look at Sergei Glaziev, who is the architect of all of this, is the Minister of Economics for the Eurasian Economic Union, these countries are all coming together. And they will represent the majority of human population, the majority of GDP, the majority of nuclear, 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals on the planet, the majority of all the world's commodities, etc. In fact, as I just diverged for 1 second, JP Morgan just published a report the other day. You want to talk about stupid and not thinking things out? They reported the other day that their head of commodity research, Joyce Chang, International Research, and Amy Ho, Global Research, they said in 2023, China produced 68% of the world's rare earth minerals. and 70% of the graphite. However, their real dominance lies in mineral processing. China produced or processed 100% of the world's graphite supply and 90% of the rare earths and 74% of the cobalt. Haven't thought this stuff out. We talk about how China bought the London Metals Exchange a few years ago. That's the base metal exchange. They're striking deals all around the world in their Belt Road and their BRICS, the trade routes, the shipping routes. They control the Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea right now, and they will own the majority of all of the world's commodities. The countries that are coming together are doing what Zoltan Pozsar said, Bretton Woods, a system all about commodities. All right, now let's get back to where I was going. Sorry for being on.
No, please keep going.
Thank you. All right, so we got that out of the way. We know what they were talking about last week. Let's go the week before. 2 weeks ago at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This is where it gets interesting. Putin gives a speech. The Bretton Woods monetary system is dead and gone, and the current one is based on the confidence of the U.S. economy. That's what we just said. Bretton Woods is dead and gone. Both Bretton Woods 1 and the loose interpretation of Bretton Woods 2, the petrodollar, is gone. I would argue the hegemony is dead, the supremacy isn't, because the dollar still represents the majority of all reserves and trade and all that stuff, but
good point.
Declining. All right. So he says it's dead, and there is no guarantees, so to say, other than the confidence in the U.S. economy. All right, here are the interesting things. He says, Putin says, there's been a major breakthrough in the payment structure, common payment infrastructure for the BRICS that would be independent from the pressure and sanctions of the collective West, and that they've come up with something. And he had a meeting while at the Economic Forum, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, with a woman named Dilma Rousseff, who is the president of the BRICS New Development Bank. This is not a peon. This is the president of the New Development Bank, where she says, we did talk in detail about the bank's development, and most of all, as confirmed by Rousseff, the unit. What's the unit? I have been talking about something almost identical to this for 3.5 years because of Sergei Glaziev, who told us a BRICS common settlement currency would consist of a basket of local currencies of the BRICS plus countries and a basket of commodities. Now, right. I think you realize that a basket of commodities is not really the most efficient way to do this. So what they came out and said was that the unit, which is a apolitical transactional form of cross-border payments, will be anchored in 60% BRICS plus currencies and 40% in, guess what? The only other tier one reserve asset that all these countries are buying and taking possession of, gold. Cool. The day after this meeting, President Dilma had an even more crucial meeting, it says, at 10 a.m. in a private room with Sergei Glaziev, the architect of all this shit, and the Minister of Macroeconomics for the Eurasian Economic Union, and the member of Russian Academy of Sciences. Glaziev, who had previously provided full academic backing to the unit concept, explained all the details to President Dilma. They were both extremely pleased with the meeting. A beaming Rousseff revealed that she had already discussed the unit with Putin, and it was agreed that there will be a special conference at the NDB in Shanghai on the unit in September. And the article went on to say this means the new payment system has every chance to be at the table during the BRICS summit in October in Kazan, which, are they going to announce this new settlement currency? They also announced that no less than 59 nations and counting plan to join not only the BRICS, but also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union. Oh, really? They're all going to join together. Been saying that for 3 years. They're the same countries. You put those together, the BRICS, the SCO, and the EAEU with the Belt Road Initiative, you're talking 90% of human population, the majority of all the world's commodities, a much larger military might, come on, all the shipping lanes, all the transport. This is getting very, very real. And the only other thing that I wanted to talk to you about that I mentioned a little bit offline was the, I guess you could say they are hinting towards it will be used in conjunction with Project mBridge. And Project mBridge, which was announced by Reuters on June 5th that, shockingly enough, Saudi Arabia has joined a China-dominated central bank digital currency cross-border trial in which another step towards less of the world's oil trade being done in dollars. The move announced by the BIS on Wednesday will see Saudi central bank become a full participant of Project mBridge. Now, Project mBridge, as you and I were discussing, is able to accommodate other platforms. Now, what I had heard was that it would accommodate SIPS, the cross-interbank payment system that Chinese have developed. I forgot the four-letter acronym of the one that the Russians have developed, along, if they wanted, with SWIFT and other digital platforms. And it's interesting because I believe, Versan, that gold has replaced the U.S. Treasury for a lot of these countries. And if you look at gold, since 2000, it's averaged 9.9% per year compounding. It's doubled the 10-year Treasury's performance, but what does it have? No counterparty risk. And when our idiot administration goes in, and it's one thing to sanction and freeze Iranian assets. It's another thing to confiscate Russian assets and give them or turn it into weapons, that the proceeds into weapons, and give it to the Ukraine, the country Russia is fighting in the midst of a war. When you do that, as a country that is viewed holier than thou in our own eyes, but hypocritical in the rest of the world, where we can say in an interview to CNN, Janet Yellen says, look, we're okay with Russia and China being friends. Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. That's benevolent of you. But if China gives one penny to Russia for their war efforts, we will sanction their banks, their companies, and Beijing itself. Forget that we've given $260 billion to the Ukraine and given Javelin missiles and F-16s and the intelligence on where to fire things. That doesn't matter. Our you-know-what doesn't stink. And when we can go around the world imposing these sanctions, which much of the world views as hypocritical, the way we've dealt with Iraq, still there 20 years later, sanctioning their banks, holding their oil revenue, not allowing them to access it. And yet we supposedly went there to find weapons of mass destruction, didn't find any, supposedly put in a new regime, but yet we're making the decisions. We're still there 20 years later. The world looks at us as hypocritical, right?
Yeah.
That's why Iraq has joined the BRICS, has kicked out Western coalition forces, or in the process of doing it, and made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business there, you go to jail and they'll take your business. So anyways, when you look at all of this and you see the fact that the Saudis have joined mBridge, the first two trades that were done as test trades in 2023 were China using the digital yuan and cross-border trades payment system to buy gold and to buy oil, free from the SWIFT system. These are the two commodities that can't be sanctioned. And when you look at, for example, China signing or winning a very big contract with Iran to modernize their biggest airport, Iran's paying a few $1 billion worth of this in oil. Oil and gold are becoming remonetized. They are assets that carry no counterparty risk, and they are assets that the world realizes are worth more than the dollars that buy them. This is a very big deal. But the whole premise, the way that I understand it, and this is where you can come in and educate me and everyone else with mBridge, is that these countries, this will not be a BRICS currency. That's the settlement part we'll talk about, we just mentioned, but what they're saying is that they can use their own central bank digital currencies to remain autonomous. And so China can buy soybeans and corn from Brazil. They'll pay them in using the mBridge to sidestep SWIFT in digital yuan, which can go right back using the mBridge to buy gold, which is yuan is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. What is gold? Oh yeah, the only other tier one asset that will be 40% backing the new settlement status. So you trade in local currencies with one another and settle in the new BRICS settlement currency, which has a 40% gold backing and a 60% weighted currency average. So you got to keep your fiscal and monetary house in order. And what this does is light the very long fuse, the little by little by little by little of all of these countries trading, settlement outside the dollar in local bilateral agreements, local currencies. And instead of all of the excess reserves going into U.S. treasuries as they used to, where are they going now? Oh yeah, into commodities. And who's selling those reserves, those treasuries? Saudi, China, Japan, Russia, all of these countries that have been our creditors for years realize that the counterparty liability of not aligning ideologically is a death sentence. And so treasury markets can be inflated, they can be defaulted upon. Look at the performance the last few years where interest rates rise 500 basis points. Look at the confiscation of Russian assets. All of these countries say, screw it, I'm out. The European Union is not immune to this either. They have a few hundred billion of the Russian assets now. They haven't confiscated them, but they are confiscating the interest payments and using those billions to give to the Ukraine. We've broken the trust of the rest of the world. And so what Project mBridge does is it allows these countries to retain their autonomy with their own currencies, trade with one another outside of SWIFT, and settle in gold, in essence, which is becoming, I believe, the new reserve for all these nations. And just so you know, since 2000, gold has averaged 9.9% per year. It has doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury, but has no counterparty liability. So when you see India repatriate 100 metric tons, when you see the Bundesbank, the Dutch National Bank, Bank of Austria, Turkey, Hungary, Poland, Czech National Bank repatriate all of their gold from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, when you see Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, Algeria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all be buying gold hand over fist, using the suppression of the over-leveraged, over-rehypothecated Western system to run cover for all of this accumulation of assets, and then bring it home, speaks volumes. So I've said it there. That's what's changed. And you know what? The world is spinning faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And since we've last talked, so many things are happening. And they're also increasing in veracity and in severity. And to underestimate this, the underestimate the importance and the significance of all of these assets moving from west to east, the loss of trust, the loss of the hegemony, the weaponizing of the dollar, the destruction of everything in this country that once was held sacred, including the elections and the immigration and the Justice Department. To underestimate the significance of it is a big mistake, and it is not lost on the rest of the world. So I would like to hear your comments, if you have any, as to, because I know you're the expert on
I was going to say, let's wrap it up. I'm just kidding. You covered everything, Andy. And
speak to one another.
Well, I was going to say, it's been a fascinating discussion so far. I mean, Andy, this is why I enjoy talking to you. My brother and I, you really get it. You see the bigger picture, and not to mention everything you've described is spot on. It certainly ties us into the Cloward-Piven strategy. For those who don't know what the Cloward-Piven strategy is, so you don't have to go research it, it is a deliberate effort to overwhelm and break down all systems. And that's what we see happening here. And this is why we always emphasize to continuously prepare and diversify your portfolio. So, Andy, I have so much to say about the mBridge. I'm going to get back to that in a minute, but I want to step back for a second to, again, the petrodollar. I want people to understand the significance of it. It's because the end of the petrodollar just results in a decreased demand for dollars. And what does that mean? It means that it causes those dollars to return to the US. And when those dollars return to the US, you have an influx of dollars. And those influx of dollars coming back to the US devalue the purchasing power of all the other dollars already in circulation. And that results in hyperinflation if not managed properly. Am I correct on that so far?
Yes, 100%.
All right. So what I found interesting too, and we'll go back to mBridge, ladies and gentlemen, but there's an article I read, and it's been going around Twitter from Wall Street Journal. It came out the other day, and it said that crypto could stave and help the US avoid a debt crisis. And I just find that very interesting because the news of what's happening with the petrodollar and what we see happening in the digital asset space and with the precious metals market, this is all converging into the direction that central banks already were moving towards. The accelerated adoption of distributed ledger technology. And what I find even more interesting is that central banks are already using, or they're not using it yet, but they've partnered with Ripple. And Ripple, you know, they use XRP, they leverage XRP to move value. So what's interesting, based on the research I have with the digital asset XRP, that they could use this technology to mitigate a banking crisis, a debt market bubble, and even the bubbles that we see in the crypto market. So All of this, again, tying back to the Cloward-Piven strategy, it seems like a classic problem reaction solution scenario. What do you think about that, Andy? And then we can go back into mBridge and a few other things, because I have thoughts on that.
100%. I mean, the whole goal of the Cloward-Piven theory is to, in essence, as you mentioned, overwhelm the system, but move it to and targeting the America's largest cities. But, the whole idea is to replace America's capitalist economy and replacing it with socialist system that includes guaranteed incomes and, universal basic income, moving us to a socialist economy, redistribution of wealth. And I think it's too stupid to be stupid when you look at all of the things that have happened. Even the $42 million, $1 billion that was given to the Biden administration to provide high-speed internet to everyone. Listen to this. Lawmakers and internet companies blame the slow rollout because not one person has been connected, when they could have just gone to Elon Musk and got his internet or his satellite version of it, whatever it's called, something star. But Starlink. Yeah. It says, because the requirements for obtaining the funds include, and this is from the internet companies, climate change mandates, preferences for hiring union workers, and the requirement that eligible companies prioritize the employment of justice-impacted people with criminal records to install broadband equipment. That is what you have to do to get part of the money, the $42 billion Congress gave them in 2021 to do this, and not anyone has. It's just like the $8 or $9 billion they were given to make the charging stations. 7 have come up. They have no idea what the hell is going on, because everything is based upon a ridiculously flawed metric, and they are moving us. They are trying to move us with the divisiveness, with the influx of all this immigration, 17 million people. Part of the Cloward-Piven strategy is to create a loyal serfdom of people and their children who will never vote for anyone but Democrats ever again, because they are the ones providing the universal basic income, the entitlement. 65% of all the people receiving taxpayer-based entitlement subsidies are illegally in this country, 65%. And yeah, I think indeed this is exactly what is happening, and highly probable. As disgusting as it truly is, these are our leaders that are moving us in this direction.
Very true. Nicely said. Thank you, Andy. Now talk about the mBridge, and we'll kind of go into precious metals and even the banking sector. That's something I did want to talk about.
Yeah.
Now, I've been studying the technology alongside my brother behind crypto, and that's the distributed ledger technology. And what I find very interesting is that if you look at the BRICS nations and the New Development Bank and their project mBridge, which is, again, like you said, a cross-border blockchain system, what I find very intriguing is that the technology is interoperable. And those in the crypto space who are listening to this understand what it means when I say interoperability. That means it can be interoperable with select digital assets and other digital assets, but that's what it says. It says it's interoperable with select digital assets. Now, they haven't mentioned which ones, even though my brother and I, we've speculated that XRP and XLM will play a very key role in this. And, I don't have favoritism over these assets. It's just I do a lot of research on them and I understand them. This is where it gets interesting. If you actually look at the central banks of the BRICS nations, like India, Brazil, the UAE, and many more, by the way, we have the documents right here. They're all in paper file. I have everything here. It shows in these documents that these central banks and financial institutions in these BRICS nation countries have been using Ripple's technology. And Ripple, again, leverages the digital asset XRP to transmit the value. For those who understand what XRP really is, it was designed to play the role of a global reserve cross-border settlement mechanism, which means the technology could replace the dollar, but still coexist with it and other currencies worldwide. And if you read the World Bank document, it actually talks about how every country will have their native digital currency, which is essentially a CBDC. Now, my point, though, is that the connection between the BRICS nation central banks and Ripple, alongside the New Development Bank of Project mBridge, that's interoperable, it just suggests that there's a link over there that I think many are failing to see. Because I get challenged this question quite often, and I try to answer it the same way. For 3 years, my brother and I, we've been not bragging here, but spot on with everything we've been saying in the digital asset space. The other day, we told people gold-backed stablecoins were going to be a thing for 3 years. It just got validated. So sometimes I get goosebumps, Andy, when I stumble upon these things that are hidden in plain sight. What are your thoughts on what I just described over there? Do you think that XRP could play a key role in this?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. And I know that XRP has, if I'm not mistaken, they are working. If I'm not mistaken, I think Saudi Arabia signed a contract with them. Is that true? So you have a lot of
Ripple, yes.
Yes. And so you have a lot of countries in the Southern Hemisphere who understand this. And if you realize, and to your point where you talk about everyone having their own central bank digital currency, see, that's where everyone missed it. They were looking for a common currency, a common reserve currency, but they don't need to do that. They will allow, see, the whole concept of BRICS, Versan, is cooperation, right? No one is in there with coercion. Everyone is in there because they want to be, and they are not beholden to one another. But if you have a common settlement currency, which has a backing of gold and a backing of these currencies in the basket of those member countries, you have a certain amount of responsibility to keep your monetary and fiscal house in order and to keep enough gold. And you have the autonomy of being your own currency and the ability to trade with one another in your own local currencies, digital, over the mBridge, and to settle in a common settlement unit. Now, where XRP fits into that, you have a better understanding than I do. But I will simply say this, that there is no question in my mind that if you want this to work, you have to have transparency and you have to have veracity and immutability and a backing. So that backing is gold. We know that. And it's interesting, if you look at the way the name of the accounts that gold is held in every central bank, it's called the gold revaluation account. That's on their balance sheet. So how high gold goes is anyone's guess. That's why guys like James Rickards, who I know, you're sorry, don't mean to bang that. You're a follower of, he's talking $27,000 an ounce for gold, taking, I think, M2 and dividing it into the number of ounces we supposedly have at Fort Knox. Guys like James Sinclair said it would go to 10,000 and never come back because it will be pegged to a new system. Why else would the BIS reclassify it tier 1? But it doesn't matter if you have the greatest thing in the world. See, when I think of Tether and their gold-backed currency, there's so much bad press on Tether. People really don't trust Tether, that I wouldn't trust their stable coin either, because it's not just, okay, fine, show me who's auditing it, show me the veracity of it, where is it, what kind, where is it held? And I think if done properly, using things like XRP to show the immutability and the veracity and to do it the right way, you can back this new settlement feature with gold and have no questions as to the authenticity and the ability to transact with one another in a meaningful and in a way that is, I guess we could say, what is the word I'm looking for? Let's say and no pun intended, a swift a manner, a efficient manner, and a transparent manner, and an immutable manner. So yeah, I mean, that is what blockchain technology does, and you would know better than me that XRP is supposedly one of the best ways of doing this, and has the greatest expansion. Can hold the more weight that goes on it, the stronger it becomes. So yeah, I think absolutely it makes great sense. And one of the things that they've done a great job of, the BRICS, if I admire anything from afar, it's that they don't give too much information. They drop some crumbs. We have to use Occam's razor and put the obvious things together. For some reason, I've been able to see that for the last 3 or 4 years, but not as clearly as it's unfolding, but clearly enough to see that there was a trend that has been gaining momentum. I've done over 3,000 videos since 2019 on this subject, and it scares me. Less goosebumps and more scared when I see all of these things unfolding. But there is no question that there will be a melding of the hard asset world, as Zoltan Pozar calls it, Bretton Woods 3, a system of commodities, and I would add into it transparency and immutability. And that's where you have a marriage of blockchain technology and of commodities. And when you see countries like Saudi Arabia, who are already striking deals with Ripple, with XRP, using the technology, I think it would be foolish to bet against it. And the probabilities, in a world of probabilities, to me speak volumes. And yeah, no, it makes great sense what you're saying.
I appreciate that. But just to expand very briefly on Tether. Tether does get a lot of bad press. I've been pushing this for 3 years as well. We really figured a lot of this shit out a long time ago. And for those who don't know, just for the audience, Tether is a product of Bitcoin. It's simply playing the role of a bad bank. And they claim that the USDT is backed by the dollar, which broke the peg 2 or 3 times. Janet Yellen was called in to testify on this and asked, was it concerning? And she said, yes, absolutely. But then the dollar is not backed by anything but debt. What I discovered, though, just to leave you with this, Andy, is there's a revolving door between Tether, Bitcoin, and the US bond market. What they're doing is they're artificially producing, Tether keeps lending out Tether, producing fake liquidity. They're buying up Bitcoin used to prop up the bond market because they're buying the bonds that other countries are selling.
Yeah, who's dumb enough to buy a 10-year treasury, a country that will weaponize it and has chosen inflation over austerity? That makes great sense.
It does, yes. And Tether is fueling the
largest.
How
you do things in plain sight that no one can see.
That no one can see. And guess what? It's anonymous, right? That's why the SEC can't go after them. See? And who created Bitcoin? That's the big question. It's the National Security Agency. We're not going to get into that discussion, but it's very interesting. We should talk about it sometime.
I've read it, and after reading it, it was interesting. It was hard not to think that they weren't behind at least the hashtag or the, again, I'm showing how big of a neophyte I really am, but I read it and it made it seem like they were the ones behind the actual technology, let's just say.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you the real secret. They're propping up the US bond market with Bitcoin. I'm not kidding. So it's very strange. And I've been down that rabbit hole many times. I want to shift our focus to precious metals. I think this is where everything is converging with, is the precious metals market. There is no doubt that the new BRICS currency is going to have some sort of gold backing. Like you said earlier, if you're going to build a new system, it needs trust, it needs stability. And that means to some degree, there has to be gold backing, whether it's partial or full. That's a whole different story. It doesn't matter. It's certainly going to play an essential role. Recently, we saw gold hit an all-time high, despite the fact that it is being suppressed, and it is being suppressed. I think we're getting to a point where the BRICS nations are going to solidify the new exchange that you've discussed here with me, and they're going to reclassify the metals market without U.S. intervention. We do know that the U.S. has been suppressing the precious metals market, especially silver. But I think given the geopolitical landscape and just the shifting balance of power to the other side of the world, I don't think the U.S. can continuously suppress the precious metal market for any much longer. What do you think?
When these exchanges were designed 140 years ago, the LBMA and in 1974, the COMEX, the rest of the world was not coordinated, sophisticated, or wealthy enough to stand up to the West. They designed the COMEX. In 1974, they made gold legal again for people to buy. The day after that, they created the COMEX. And the COMEX, which has rehypothecated or sold over and over and over and over and over and over again the same ounces to different people, which allows them to control the price. You have to understand that these exchanges never stood for delivery. No one ever did. One out of a gazillion stood for delivery. The COMEX was designed to offset risk, where if I hold 5,000 ounces of gold in my warehouse, I'll sell 5,000 ounces on paper. And I do that because if the gold in my warehouse, if it drops by $100, I'm down $500,000, but I'm up $500,000 on what I sold short. It allows me to be market neutral. I'm not going to stand for delivery on long contracts. I'm doing it to offset short positions where I'm selling or buying. I'll take the other side always, right? And that's what it was designed for. A farmer planting a field in April who's concerned about the growing season can forward sell his production to the baker who needs the flour to make bread. He buys the wheat from the farmer. The farmer's happy to sell the production to the baker in April and to the, to take delivery in September or October. Those are the kinds of things that the exchanges were designed to do, to offset risk. And so very few people ever stood for delivery. But now you have an environment where the market has been rehypothecated so tremendously, and these countries in the global south are cunning, wealthy, sophisticated, coordinated, and are beat. This is how they can blow up the largest commercial banks in the West. Just stand for delivery, because every time someone naked shorts, there's someone on the other end who takes that long position. And that long position does have a delivery mechanism. You want to take it, you can. And if all of these countries who have the ability to, I don't care what you do to the price, I'll keep using my money to margin. Go ahead, margin call me. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And when it comes time for delivery, I'm taking delivery. And that's a problem when the whole world is in search of natural resources. And these exchanges, which have been able to control the price through rehypothecation because no one ever stood for delivery, are running out of ammunition. And it's very interesting if you go to the Shanghai Gold Exchange website and you look at the second week in March, they publish this on their website, on their homepage. For 4 weeks in a row, each week there was a different bank, HSBC, JP Morgan, Standard Charter, and Deutsche Bank. These are all massive short positions in the silver market. Now, why did they go to the Shanghai Exchange? You cannot export gold out of China, only silver.
Right.
If you realize that 2.9 billion ounces of silver are trading a day on the LBMA, and they just came out and said, London Metals Exchange said, we have the lowest amount of silver we've had in the 140-year history of the exchange. You look at the amount of silver being bled off of COMEX, and you've got all of these contracts that are naked short by the Western banks. And look at a country like India, import 260 million ounces of silver in the last 2 years. They bought more silver in the first 4 months of the year than they did in the entire year last year. These countries realize, here's how you win the game without ever firing a bullet. Load up on the contracts, play the short game, go ahead and suppress the price with paper like the West is doing, and then stand for delivery. There was a contract that was created by the CME Group, which is the COMEX, basically, in March of 2015. And this contract that is physically deliverable in Hong Kong at BRICS, which is a COMEX depository. So a few weeks ago, Friday, $571 million worth of gold, or 243,054 ounces. That's 7,560 kilobars. This contract that is deliverable in Hong Kong is only kilobars, which most of what is traded on the COMEX is 100 ounce. But these mini contract bars, they can go to Hong Kong. The theory is they are then trucked immediately over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange, where they are then sent out in terms of delivery options, where Iran can sidestep sanctions by selling their oil to China for yuan, which is then immediately convertible into gold, into kilobars on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So this exodus of stash, who's got $571 million to buy in Hong Kong? Who? Someone with a lot of money. But this is one trade. So we're seeing the bleed down of the Western exchanges and the bleed down of the LBMA. They say it's the lowest amount of silver they've ever had. You cannot export gold out of China, just silver. And if you look at the silver stockpiles, which just reached maybe their lowest level ever in Hong Kong in Shanghai, down to 700 tons, what you have to realize is that starting almost to the day that the first bank, these Western bullion banks that are wickedly short, naked, showed up in Shanghai, the Shanghai silver inventories have been falling. Now, what do we take away from that? I take away they went there and said, please, we got to work out a deal. This doesn't do any of us any good if we blow up the entire system, because everyone is standing for delivery and we don't have enough silver to deliver. So please hook us up with some silver. We'll do quid pro quo, whatever the hell you need. This is not done out of benevolence. And so much so that the price that the Shanghai Metals Exchange is buying silver for right now from the world is $4 an ounce higher than on COMEX or on the LBMA. That's called arbitrage. They will suck all of the metal that is not nailed down in the West and move it over there. Will never come back. But my guess is they went to the Shanghai Exchange, and you can see 4 weeks in a row coinciding with the drawdown in their silver stockpiles. They're trading 2.9 billion ounces a day. They're caught with their pants down. And they have a whole bunch of people saying, we need our silver. Thank you very much. So they went there begging because it's gone on COMEX. Literally, there's only 60 million ounces backing the registered category. Those are the bars available for delivery. China imported 10 times that amount in the last 2.5 years. So there's only 300 million ounces supposedly that's available on the LBMA, right? 800 million there, 500 million owned by the ETFs. So India's imported over twice what is on the LBMA in the last 2.5 years. They're running out of inventory because no one ever stood for delivery. And when guys like Big Swear said this is the Achilles heel of the West, I never quite understood it, but I do now. Because if you make a bank like Standard Chartered or HSBC, who is the custodian of GLD, by the way, or JP Morgan, who is a custodian of SLV, by the way, or any of these large bullion banks, if they default on a delivery contract, how fast do you think everyone will flock like flies to shit to get their metal and everything that is held in custody by these banks, by these exchanges? Give it to me now. Bang, the whole thing blows up. And that's, I think, what they are looking for, because when that happens, then everything moves to the exchanges in the United Arab Emirates, who just joined BRICS, to the Moscow exchange, who's in BRICS, and to the Shanghai exchange. So all of a sudden, and by the way, over the last 60 days, the combined volume of the Shanghai Gold and Futures Exchange, both, one is cash and carry, one is futures, exceeds that of the COMEX. It is now the second most relevant metals trading hub on the planet. And so when the Western systems get exposed for being Bernie Madoff, for being a Ponzi scheme, the whole thing blows up, and price discovery and global trading shifts to the east, along with the majority of everything that hasn't been nailed down. So yeah, I think it's a matter of time before the shit breaks free, and these commercial banks that are as dumb as a mud wall, their only salvation will be, and I wouldn't put it past them, or how stupid the managed money is that right at the 12th hour, as we're getting there now, they flip. Now, over the last several months, they have been record short, maybe never been as short as I've ever seen in gold and silver on COMEX. So the commercial banks were short. That means the managed money was long. And what happened to the price of gold and silver? Bang, it got clobbered. So the managed money's licking their wounds. And you got the banks that go to Shanghai, say, help us, and probably say, we need to get out of this shit now. So the price gets hammered. And then what happens? The managed money sells their longs and goes short. Who takes the other side of that? Well, that'd be the commercial banks. Their only salvation will be to one last time before it all breaks. And one of these days, there will be a last time for them to get the managed money to take the other side of those trades and to go short. And boom, they blow up. And the commercial banks skate away richer than, a pig in shit, and don't go down in a heap of flames, even though they deserve to, because they have hoodwinked the dumb traders into going short, and they take the opposite side before it all blows up. So could we be there? Don't know. But when you see the Shanghai silver numbers drop to where they are, realizing that the LBMA and the COMEX are at record low levels, there's not much left fruit to pick, to give to delivery requests. And so naked shorting, meaning shorting with nothing behind it, just the ability to keep creating contracts with money, is as dumb as a mud wall in a rainstorm. And it seems to me that the Western central banks are this close to being trapped. And maybe, just maybe, this drive to accumulate real things and possess it through repatriation, like we've seen by all these central banks, means we are this close to seeing real price discovery and the market finally accentuate itself and break free from the 100+ year suppression of the monetary metals, because strong monetary metals cast a negative shadow upon the bond market, which they try to support, just like they're trying to do here with Tether and Bitcoin, and the currency market of the West. Game's over nearly, and either you see it for what it is or you don't. And that's why I really do believe if you are not a contrarian, you're bound to be a victim if this breaks. So, we're getting closer than we've ever seen. In my opinion, in my career, never been this close.
Almost there. And I think just with everything going on, again, how it's all converging, we are moving back to an asset-backed economy. And people are going to run for the hills when this all comes into fruition.
Well, and I'll I had this painting made. Let me show you this painting.
Yes.
If I can show you. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Let's do this. See that painting? See what it says?
Little by little by
Then all at
you
once.
had it painted.
Little by
That's so
little and
cool.
all at once. Right. So
Oh my God, I gotta get
little
one.
by little, Versan, people have a hard time dealing with because the instant gratification of Bitcoin and Nvidia and everything just like this, that's what people expect. Now, I've been in this business for 34 years. My mentor, Richard Russell, said, you make 7% a year, you're a rock star. By the way, gold's gone up 9.9% compounding since 2000. But the point of it is that this little by little lulls people into a false sense of security. They dismiss it, they poo-poo it, it's a nothing burger because they can't see these little steps that you and I have been talking about that are so huge, but not reported in the Western media. But I will tell you one thing. These people who claim that the BRICS, this is just a nothing, they will be blown away by the all at once. When the all at once happens, when the switch is flipped, when critical mass in terms of human population, global GDP, military might, trade routes, commodities, they're all, this is what they're doing. And when they get to that large enough number, a percentage of human population, bang, then the all at once will freak people out and it will be a religious experience. So yes, you can see the little by little if you open your eyes. And you and I were talking offline how they drop the crumbs at our feet. Hard to find unless you dig and research. But if all you do is rely upon the Western media to inform you, you ain't getting out of the way of this truck that's barreling down right in front of your face. And let's hope that these conversations that we have and that you have with others and whatnot are helping at least one or two people open their eyes and see what's coming, because I think it is coming. And look, I got 3 kids, man. My youngest just turned 17. I don't want to be a buzzkill, a doom and gloomer. I want my kids to have the opportunities that I did, but I'm really beginning to wonder.
Well, you're being a realist, Andy, and I think that's the most important thing. And have we helped people? Absolutely. I get messages all day from our supporters telling me to even bring you back on. We're making a difference, and that's important. The fact that we can even talk about this, most people are not going to get any of their news from mainstream media. That's it. And I think the trust is already broken. So people are starting to catch on, but the fact that they're catching on means the window is closing. It's an honor to be here with 2 guys that are doing the best they can. You know, when we all meet our maker one day and they say, what did you guys do to help the world? And they'll look at you and your brother and say, oh, you guys are good, get on in. And the same thing is true here. I think that, we do the best we can to help, and there's no reason why you can't run a successful business and try to do right by your fellow brother and sister at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I do try my hardest to do right by people, and I sleep well at night doing that. So thanks for having me here. Your kind words mean a lot. It's 100% mutual admiration society, and I look very, very forward to picking up where we left off, hopefully not too far down the road. And the Chinese curse, brother, may you live in interesting times. These are damn interesting, and they're not dull and complacent. This isn't Mayberry anymore, and I kind of long for those days, but I'd rather know what's coming than get steamrolled by it. So thanks for sharing your insights. Thanks for letting me share mine. And let's do it again before the election. There's going to be a lot to talk about, man. One short last question for you, and I need a short response. That'd be great. I'm doing this for a dear friend of mine, Julia Davis. She told me to ask you personally, what would have to happen for the world or the U.S. to put the dollar behind gold again? I don't think it's that far-fetched. Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, said any central bank digital currency that's not pegged to something will be fiat. Right. What is the only other tier 1 reserve asset next to dollars and treasuries? That'd be gold. And I was asked this question by Michelle McCory a year and a half ago in Vancouver. And my answer was, look, the IMF before Kristalina Georgieva said that. You can Google this, it'll pop right up. They wrote a report and it said gold as an international reserve, a barbarous relic no more, ? I think everyone at that level understands that we've broken trust, and this system needs to be pegged to something to re-inspire trust. And just listen to Judy Shelton, and she's gonna, if Trump wins, she'll probably run the Fed, and she's a advocate of the gold standard. And I think that is the only way that you right the ship. But the question is, do you have to reset the system before you go there? I don't know. I can't really quite figure that out. But simply to say the only way that you pull out of this nosedive
is to reunite this country, to reunite the values that this country possesses, and find a way to find fiscal and monetary sanity. And that means having a tether to the currency. And the only way you do that is with the only other tier one asset, that's gold. So yes, in fact, I think it's highly probable that the IMF will do this and maybe surprise us all and try to preempt it to beat the BRICS at their own punch. It would be the only way that I think you restore almost immediately confidence in a system that has none anymore.
Well, there you have it, Julia. I hope you heard it. She's going to listen to this later on.
Thanks, Julia.
Anyways, Andy, I know you're very busy, but thank you so much for contributing your time here. And always a pleasure, man. And I'll send you some more documents. I got some stuff on mBridge. I'll highlight it.
Please do. Please do. And my regards to you, your brother, all the listeners out there. Thanks for letting me come and chat with you for a while. And I look forward to picking up where we left off, my man. Let's do it again soon.
All right, brother. Take care. Okay. I'm going to finish talking to the audience, so you're welcome to leave. So
see you, bro.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. So I'm about to close out. Unfortunately, we did not have enough time to talk about everything, but I want to make it very clear to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. banking sector is in big trouble. Okay. We're seeing a lot of defaults, credit card delinquencies, credit crunches, and consolidations. Even Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve confirmed that 3 weeks ago, there are going to be lots of consolidations in the banking system. So make sure if you have money in the bank, keep what you need in there, and that's it. All right. Continue to position yourself. Be positive. We got this, ladies and gentlemen. XRP to the moon. Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.